It's that time of the year again, folks. The Game Awards are upon us. It's right on the horizon, and we have seen the nominees for Game of the Year 2025. The current Game Awards website it's super slow right now, so I'm just going to use Polygon's article to present the Game of the Year nominees, which include Clear Obscure Expedition 33, Death Stranding 2 on the Beach, Donkey Kong Bonanza, Hades 2, Hollow Knight Silksong, and Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. And Clear Obscure Expedition 33 in particular, it's leading with 12 nominations across various categories, which is the most nominations that any game has ever received in the history of the Game Awards. My money is on Clear Obscure Expedition 33 winning. That just seems like a sure bet. And then beyond that, Sony Interactive Entertainment is leading with 19 nominations across the slate of games that they've published. So there's fun facts like that worth highlighting, and it's cool to see the successes of some of these games that do deserve that level of success, and companies that have outputted really exceptional titles. Huge congratulations to all those games, which are awesome. And of course, there's going to be discussions about what games should have made it versus which one shouldn't have. Ghost of Yotei, some people are saying should have made it. Split Fiction, I'm actually surprised not to see up there, but these are very strong nominees, and I wish them the best of luck. Now, I'm not someone who takes these kinds of Game Awards so seriously that I'm super emotionally invested. I'm happy to see games that deserve to win and gain that kind of recognition. But the Game Awards draws in a huge audience, and nominees and winners are significantly impacted, where you can see game sales boost when they're represented by the Game Awards. And so the Game Awards as a whole does have a certain kind of responsibility to ensure that all of the games are looked at thoroughly, and to ensure that the games that are represented properly. And that's an area where there's been a couple misses here and there, and we're getting another such situation. So let's check out the debut indie game category. We've got Blueprints, Clear Obscure Expedition 33. That's probably going to win this category. I don't know how to pronounce this. I think it's Despelot, maybe. If I'm wrong about that, I apologize. You've got Dispatch, which, took the world by storm over the last few weeks. And this game right here called Megabonk. Now, it's worth highlighting that this award is not for Best Indie Game, but Best Debut Indie Game. That's to say the first game ever developed by a developer or a studio. And you can see right here, going to Megabonk's Steam page, that it is listed as a Game Awards 2025 nominee. So what is Megabonk? Well, basically, it is a roguelite survival game akin to Vampire Survivors, basically a Vampire Survivors-like, if you will. And you can see right here a trailer, a little footage to show what kind of game this is. So you can see that the gameplay is very much in line with Vampire Survivors, where you've got hordes of enemies coming your way, and you just automatically attack things around you, and you get upgrades as you kind of move along through a stage, and it's all, randomized and whatnot. Looks pretty fun. It's garnered a lot of positive reception, with reviews overall looking at 93% from almost 30,000 reviews, and recently, 92% from 13,000 reviews. And then beyond positive reviews, it's done pretty well for itself on Steam, with peak concurrent player numbers exceeding 117,000 players at its highest player count. So that's pretty damn good for a brand new indie game. Now, according to Steam's listing, this game is both developed and published by Vedinad. If you go to Steam's Vedinad developer page, you'll find that the only game there is, in fact, Megabonk. So it'd be easy to assume that this is indeed a debut indie game. But as it turns out, that may not be the case. In fact, Megabonk's official Twitter page itself is confirming that they, in fact, are not a debut indie title, stating, quote, "I'm withdrawing from the Game Awards. It's an honor and a dream for Megabonk to be nominated for the Game Awards, but unfortunately, I don't think it qualifies for the category of debut indie game. I've made games in the past under different studio names, so Megabonk is not my debut game. I really appreciate the nomination, support, and votes, but it doesn't feel right in this category. You should vote for another one of the amazing debut titles. They're all amazing games. Thanks again. New Megabonk update coming soon." Signed, John Megabonk. So what you need to know about Megabonk is that while we don't know for sure, the running theory is that Megabonk's developer is an individual going by the name Danny, who is both a content creator and also a game developer. If you look at Danny's Steam developer page, you can see that they've already shipped two games, Muck in June 5th, 2021, and Crab Game on October 29th, 2021, with another game, Carlson, coming soon. And if you look at all of those Steam pages, you can see that the games have been developed and published by Danny. Same with Muck, developed and published by Danny, and also same with Carlson, developed and published by Danny. You can see right here that every subsequent game that Danny has released has garnered more success, with Muck garnering an all-time peak concurrent player number of over 16,000 players, almost 17,000 players at its peak. Then you've got Crab Game here, which garnered, almost 76,000 concurrent players at its all-time peak on Steam. So why are people assuming that Megabonk is actually developed by Danny? Well, it's all in the developer and publisher name Vedinad. Because if you look at this name here and read it backwards, what it actually spells is Danny Dev. Well, Danny hasn't come out and flat out confirmed this for whatever reason. That is a popular running theory. And now the likelihood of that feels even higher because Vedinad came out with this statement where, despite their Steam page showing that Megabonk is the only game they've made, they insist that they've made games in the past under different studio names, like, say, Danny. It is insisted here that Megabonk is not, in fact, this individual's debut game. So the theory right now is that Megabonk is referring to the fact that they're actually Danny, and they've already shipped indie games in the past, so putting Megabonk in the debut indie game category is not correct. And here's the thing, Vedinad and Megabonk didn't have to do this. They could have just written this whole thing out. Technically, they are a new studio in the sense that it's under a different name, so this is technically the first time this specific indie studio has shipped a game, so maybe they could have gotten away with it. And so the fact that they're coming out here and admitting to all of this and choosing to withdraw from the Game Awards despite the prestige and attention that that'll bring, I mean, that's a move that carries with it a huge amount of integrity. It shows that this individual, whoever they might be, actually does care about the indie development scene and understand that, it's difficult for indie games that have just debuted to gain the spotlight. Believing that other indie developers who genuinely actually debuted an indie game for the first time deserve more of a spotlight than Megabonk right here, which people have already assumed might be Danny. And tons of people in the replies and in the quote tweets are highlighting how based this is, what a W this is, and how much integrity one must have to actually do something like this. Even in the quote tweets, a lot of people are just celebrating that Megabonk was actually willing to step aside to give more deserving devs in that particular category the spotlight. And you're also getting a lot of people who are speculating, especially with this tweet, that, hey, Danny, we know it's you, bro. We love you. And people posting dokes being, suspicious or watching closely memes to highlight that, they are very sure in their speculation that this is, in fact, Danny. Again, when you take Vedinad and spell it backwards, it's Danny Dev. And some people are arguing that it's technically okay because it is a new development studio name. It is technically its own entity, at least from what we understand, though who knows, maybe that's not really the case. And if this is indeed Danny's game, I don't know why they're keeping their identity a secret, but the fact that they're willing to be like, when I think about it, under the circumstances that I've created here, technically I don't qualify for this category. The fact that they're willing to do that, I think, is a baller move. And what that's ultimately done is actually attracted more attention towards Megabonk because people do recognize integrity and want to support integrity. So there are plenty of comments also saying, just because you are willing to do this, I'm going to buy your game. So that's really nice. So it's just a really interesting situation. And I will say this is a scenario where I don't fully blame the Game Awards for not knowing, because Megabonk's developer has kept their identity a close-guarded secret, so I can't blame everyone outside of the Danny fan base for assuming that this might be a debut indie game. But at the same time, I'm reminded of what happened last year when Dave the Diver was nominated for Best Indie Game. And you look at the game and it certainly evokes indie game. It's got that, pixelated art style. It looks lower budget. And you could assume just at a glance that it very well might be an indie game. But the thing is, Dave the Diver is decidedly not an indie game because it was created by this developer called Mint Rocket, which is a subsidiary of Nexon, which is a big South Korean game company that made, $1.8 billion in revenue in 2021 alone. It is a big conglomerate. It is a mega corporation. So the fact that Dave the Diver was nominated for Best Indie Game just because it looks like an indie game, and, the people who were responsible for putting together, the list of nominees did not look into it further, that was, a major point of contention for that particular Game Awards, and I think rightfully so. And now we're getting a situation where a game that was nominated for debut indie game technically does not qualify if Megabonk's Twitter page is to be believed, except the developer just ousted themselves and decided to just withdraw of their own volition. Now, unlike the Dave the Diver situation, which came from a lack of research, with the Megabonk situation, again, I more understand why that slipped through and why Megabonk had to come out and clarify the situation, because Megabonk's developer is being cheeky about, who they are and, are being more secretive about their identity and what they've worked on in the past. So the fact that they came out and admitted all of this and have decided to back away, again, it's just a big integrity move that, not everyone might have thought to do or, would have the integrity to do. I would also be curious if Megabonk were to, accept this nomination and then people found out it was Danny, if there would have been backlash surrounding that, or if people would have been like, well, technically Megabonk shipped without people really knowing for sure that it was Danny. It did ship under a new development studio and publisher name, so technically it counts. I don't know how that would have been perceived, but it's still cool to see that a developer genuinely cares about ensuring that the categories accurately reflect the games that are represented. Now, this happened so recently that the Game Awards hasn't responded. It hasn't had the time to respond, and this no doubt threw a major wrench, given that, the Game Awards, there's months of preparation involved. I'm curious to see if the Game Awards will respond and actually comply with Megabonk and their voluntary withdrawal from the Game Awards, if the developer will get in contact with Jeff. I'm wondering what the deliberation will be now that Megabonk has put out this statement on the part of the Game Awards, whether they'll accept this or whether they'll just ignore this and just continue on with the show. But, at the very least, Megabonk has kind of clarified everything and set the record straight. And ultimately, it's just a baller move and also just a bizarre development that nobody really expected. But, that's the Game Awards for you. You never know what will happen during these events. Anyway, that's everything you need to know about the Megabonk Game Awards situation. I'd love to hear what your thoughts and opinions are on all of this. Do you think Megabonk technically qualifies? Assuming that the developer is, in fact, just Danny with a different name, of course, who has shipped games in the past. Or do you think it was right for, assuming this is Danny, for this developer to come out and ensure that people know that they've actually debuted indie games before and that they don't deserve to be in this category? Regardless, I do think overall it is a move of integrity. But that's my take. Share your thoughts in the comments below. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.